July 20th, 1944. East Prussia. A briefcase sits under a heavy oak table. Inside, a bomb. Ticking. The man who placed it there has already left the room. He is walking to his car, waiting for the explosion, waiting for the moment that will change the war forever. The bomb goes off. Hitler walks out alive. But what if the table hadn't been there? What if the windows had been closed? What if 1 centimeter had been different? And the most wanted man in the world had died in that room. 1 briefcase, 1 table, 1 moment. And World War II ends differently. To understand what could have changed, you first need to understand the man who tried. Claus von Stauffenberg was not a fanatic. He was not a revolutionary. He was a German army officer, aristocratic, deeply religious, fiercely patriotic. He had fought for Germany in Poland, France, and North Africa, where he lost his right hand, 2 fingers on his left hand, and his left eye in an Allied air attack. He came home from Africa a different man, not because of what the war had done to his body, because of what he had seen it do to Germany. The mass killings in the East, the systematic murder of Jews and civilians, the destruction of everything he believed Germany stood for. Stauffenberg did not turn against Hitler because he was losing the war. He turned against Hitler because he believed the war itself was a crime. And by 1944, he had access that no other conspirator had. As Chief of Staff to the Reserve Army Command, Stauffenberg attended Hitler's military briefings directly. He could walk into the room. He could place a briefcase under the table. He could leave before it detonated. He tried twice before July 20th and was forced to abort both times. On the 3rd attempt, he did not hesitate. The plan was called Operation Valkyrie. Originally a Nazi emergency plan designed to suppress internal unrest, the conspirators had secretly rewritten it into something else entirely, a blueprint for a coup. The moment Hitler died, Valkyrie would activate. The Reserve Army would seize control of Berlin. Nazi leaders would be arrested. A provisional government would take power and immediately seek a negotiated peace with the Allies. It was audacious. It was dangerous. And it depended entirely on one thing: Hitler being dead. Stauffenberg placed the briefcase under the table and left the room. He watched the explosion from a distance, saw the building blow apart, and genuinely believed no one inside could have survived. He flew back to Berlin and began activating the coup. But Hitler had survived. The heavy oak table had deflected the blast. The open windows had dissipated the pressure, and one of the other officers had moved the briefcase slightly. Just enough. By the time Stauffenberg landed in Berlin, Hitler was already on the phone, alive and furious. The coup collapsed within hours. Stauffenberg was arrested that night and shot in the courtyard of the War Ministry before dawn. Now take that table out of the equation. The blast hits directly. Hitler does not walk out, and Stauffenberg lands in Berlin with the news that Germany has been waiting for, whether it knew it or not. Operation Valkyrie activates. The Reserve Army moves on Berlin. Nazi leaders, Himmler, Goebbels, Goering, are targeted for arrest. For a few critical hours, the conspirators control the capital. But here is where it gets complicated. The conspirators were not Democrats. Historians are clear on this. Their vision for post-Hitler Germany was not a liberal democracy. It was an authoritarian or constitutional order, conservative, military-led, designed to restore stability and end the war on terms that preserved German dignity. They wanted to stop the killing. They did not necessarily want to undo everything Nazism had built. And the Allies had already declared at Casablanca in 1943 that they would accept nothing less than unconditional surrender. So even with Hitler dead, even with the coup succeeding, the war does not simply end. The Allies do not shake hands with a group of German generals who spent years serving the same regime. The fighting continues, but differently. What changes is the inside of Germany. Without Hitler, the Nazi chain of command fractures. The SS and the Wehrmacht, already in tension, begin pulling in different directions. Himmler, if he survives the coup attempt, may try to seize power himself. Göring may make his own move. The unified terror that kept the Nazi state functioning begins to crack from within, and that crack changes the timeline of the war's end. July 1944. The Allies are already in France. The Soviets are pushing hard from the east. A Germany in internal chaos, leaderless, fractured, fighting itself while fighting two fronts, collapses faster. Not in May 1945. Perhaps in late 1944? Perhaps in early 1945? Months matter. Every month the war continued in our timeline cost hundreds of thousands of lives. A faster collapse means fewer deaths in the camps, on the fronts, in the bombed cities. It almost certainly means no atomic bomb dropped on Japan, because the bomb was still being built in July 1944, and a faster European end changes the entire Pacific calculation. It may mean a different map of post-war Europe, Soviet forces advancing further or less far depending on how quickly Germany surrenders, changing where the Iron Curtain eventually falls. One briefcase, one table, 1 centimeter. Stauffenberg was not trying to save Germany for democracy. He was trying to save it from itself, from the thing it had become under a man he had once served and now despised enough to die fighting. He failed because of a table. But the plan was real. The coup was real. The possibility was real. History did not have to end the way it did in May 1945. In rubble, in shame, in the full weight of what had been done in Germany's name. It almost ended 10 months earlier, in a conference room in East Prussia, with a briefcase under a table. Next episode, Japan never attacks Pearl Harbor. We ask what happens to a war that America almost never joined.